I want to get to the NIL news, but before I do so, I want to get to Lucy's genuine enthusiasm for what Nick Saban is doing with the rest of his career. Nick Saban said he was too old for Alabama football, too old for the rigors of that job. Both presidential candidates are older than Nick Saban. Lucy's very excited about Nick Saban on game day. Nick Saban is appointing himself commissioner of all rules. He's saying, I know what's best for college football. He's really going into a position at ESPN, a signature position, where he's going to be Bear Bryant emeritus as I am the face and voice of college football still, even though I'm no longer coaching college football.
I mean, he knows college football better than anyone. He's pretty much beat and perfected the system. I'm very excited for what Nick Saban is going to do on game day. I know he came out a little earlier, I believe this week or last, and was like, I'm never going to pick against Alabama. That's just not going to happen. And I really respect the honesty of that. I am so excited for Nick Saban on game day because I do share a lot of the same views as him when it comes to what the landscape of college football is. What came out today was that he wants to regulate NIL and be the voice of reason and all that stuff. I'm just genuinely excited to learn again. College football has missed the moments of wow, this is what's going on here. This is what makes this team really good, this team really good. I'm very excited to have game day be a little more educational.
Let me ask you a question, Lucy. I asked this of Dan. The problem, quote unquote, with college football that these old fogies have, they keep going to NIL, but isn't it true that the bigger issue is the freedom of movement? Them getting paid is less of an issue than the idea of I don't like it here, I'm moving.
I would say yes and no. When it comes to NIL, I agree with you. I don't think that's the big issue. And also the thing with NIL, Bessie, is if you think it wasn't happening before, you are out of your freaking mind. It has absolutely been happening for the longest time, and we can just see it now, in front of our eyes. I do think that the transfer portal is wildly unregulated. They've done a better job of here are transfer windows and stuff like this, where NIL is contributing to that. But as long as coaches can leave freely, players should probably be allowed to leave freely. It adds this crazy sort of aspect to it. But I think you see with Michigan winning the national championship last year, a lot of those guys on the team had been at Michigan their entire career, and you see that having that sort of standard and you grow and develop through a program actually helps you out. So I think it will balance itself in some way, shape, or form.
I really think it's because it happened at the same time, too, that the last few seasons have felt a little crazy if you're just a casual fan watching the sport.
Nick Saban's still going to dominate it by he'll never lose. He lost his last game and Harbaugh ran to the pros. It feels sort of seminal what happened there in terms of Belichick and Harbaugh and all of those guys getting out and changing at different times. College football is crazy. It's really crazy to watch all of the rules change on what you knew. And you're seeing the business play out in front of you in a way. I do think people are a bit startled at everything that's happening and how little governments and regulation can keep up with how you actually police any of this stuff.
Do you guys think that Nick Saban would still be coaching if name, image, and likeness wasn't around?
He kind of said, when he retired, that it was more so his age and just how much more taxing it was to coach 14-hour days, work 14, 16-hour days during the season.
Yeah. I'm familiar with what he said. Do you believe him?
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty old.
He is old.
I'm sure there's an aspect to it because, everyone's jobs got harder if you're a college football coach over the last few years because you're constantly re-recruiting players that now can leave without a penalty if they try to transfer somewhere else. That, of course, I think there's definitely a lot to be said for how much more difficult the job has gotten. But I do think a lot of people are using it as an excuse to shit on the current system in pretty disingenuous ways.
But Jess, that's my point. It's it's not the fact that they're getting paid that's made it more hard. It's the fact that if they don't like something about you, they can leave without any repercussion. That's the part that's made the job harder because, as we've said, the top stars were always getting paid.
Yeah,
right?
the coaches have lost that element of control that they've always had.
It's going to take a different approach, and coaches have mainly been unified in that the game has changed and this is not good and there needs to be some control over it. And we didn't really have a dissenting voice within the ranks. And then came Kenny Dillingham over at Arizona State, who has a tumultuous situation over at Arizona State. It's a good job to have in that there aren't many of these jobs, but, it's a tough row to hoe. But I loved his quotes, and it kind of was illuminating in some degree because he says, you're blessed. There's a lot of negativity about it, yes. But you know how many people want to be a college football head coach? I literally spent 9 years of my life doing anything to become a coffee boy. So don't give me it's hard to be a coach right now. Yeah, it's hard. If you don't like it, then quit. I think we need more of that attitude a little bit because I think certainly Nick Saban has nothing to prove in the game. And it would be disingenuous for me to say you turn around and ran away from the sport once the talent pool started getting, spread out a little bit more. But I do think that there is some validity in that it is suspicious timing, and it maybe made your decision a little bit easier because you had a different arrangement.
But why can't it be that both things are true? He's old and the job has gotten a lot more tiring because I can't imagine what it is for grandpa to be trying to connect with a 17-year-old who now has the power because you're changing.
Understood, but grandpa had all the power, and now the power has been dispersed, and it's that much more challenging. And I think whether he knows it or not, those are the challenges he's speaking to.
But it's the perfect time to get out in that regard. He gets out unblemished.
With arguably his best coaching job at Alabama, because we've seen Alabama teams of yesteryear. That team had no business making the college football playoff. None.
But it was full of highly recruited players that, it wasn't like they were a bunch of scrubs that he coached really well. Like, these were like a lot of 5-star guys that in certain position groups, like, they were just not what you expect from an Alabama team that has been recruiting really well. And like you said, there's obviously a handful of reasons why that could be the case. And maybe one of the reasons is like it took them a while to figure out their quarterback at the beginning of the season. But I tend to believe him when he says that it's just like, doing this job for as long as I've done it is really, really hard. And he didn't retire like right after NIL. Like, it's been a couple years after of the portal and NIL. So I mean, I don't even know.
He rode the wave for a couple of years.
I don't even know if it matters. Who cares? Like, like you said, like, unimpeachable record.
Well, but
and he still did it. He
greatest
proved
of all
that he could do it.
time.
No, he gave the national champion everything that they had. I just don't think that the free reign that he had over the sport was going to continue. And I thought that was pretty self-evident.
Okay, but beyond that, what I would say to you is how rare these exits, these gracefully, are. Belichick just got run out of New England. The idea that Nick Saban, best ever, can retire with this timing to a post-career that allows him to still be all around it and in it with one of the prime jobs in retirement. Bobby Bowden didn't get to finish like this. Bobby Bowden used to say this: I'm not going to retire. I'll never retire. Why? Because there's only one major event where everyone gathers after you retire, and it's the funeral. And Nick Saban's going to go into another career where he still gets to lord over the sport as the best ever. Nobody gets that ending.
Yeah.
Belichick can't even get that broadcasting job now. Nobody gets post-retirement, and I still lord over the sport forever, even though I'm getting out at the perfect time.
I am very much looking forward to his analysis and that making a return to College Gameday. I do think that they leaned a little bit more to the entertainment aspects. I also think part of the problem is no one else really up on there can speak to the ins and outs of the game du jour, because Kirk Herbstreit has to kind of essentially recuse himself of going all in because he has to be unbiased. So I love that you have a coach's view up there, especially with how Lee Corso has aged over the years. But what I'm not looking forward to is him making every excuse in the book for all of these head coaches, because you know that's coming.
Wait, Mike, I'm dumb. Why is Kirk Herbstreit recused from doing?
He can't make
analysis?
predictions on the game, so he stops short because he has to appear unbiased.
But he does give his opinion on pretty much everything.
But wait, how's that different from any other analyst on the show?
Well, they're not calling the game.
He's the lead voice as color commentary on the broadcast.
He does plenty, but I think he's the only one that does it, and the rest of the the crew, and he's kind of fallen into leaning into more of the entertainment aspects. It's fun to watch. It's light, but I do miss the nutritional aspects of it.
Yeah, bringing McAfee in is like really just like, oh, this is a party. This is a fun. We're just gonna, yell, play to the crowd, all that stuff. And we've really lost that aspect of College Game Day where you're breaking down film, you're learning about these matchups like in a more in-depth way. Nick Saban is the perfect guy to bring that in, and he's also funny and interesting, and he's been great every time he's on TV.
Who used to provide that?
Lee Corso, in a sense.
Just
Herb Street did it, but but he also has those limitations. But yeah, it's the College Game Day has turned into like more of a spectacle, and I don't want it to be entirely factual and learning and all this stuff, but I really miss that, so I'm excited to have it back.
To the argument that we were making about JJ, it's like you want to do higher, you want to do low. And what's College Game Day gone for? It's like, oh, we're breaking down X's and O's. We're going to see what the pulling guard's doing here. Like, nobody really wants to talk about that.
Do you want to be educated? Because Lucy's articulating the opposite of what J.J. Redick is arguing.
Something needs to be done, I think, to College Game Day a little bit because, look, the proof is in the pudding. They've lost. I was championing the idea that you can't just remove producers and expect the same show. A lot of the producers that made that the giant that it was.
You sure about that?
I'm telling you, a lot of the people that helped behind the scenes make that what it was are no longer there. And it's not just the analysis. It's also you lose Tom Rinaldi, you lose Wojo, and you lose some of those heartwarming aspects, those profiles that were a staple of College Game Day, and you've put more fluff around it. And the fluff is fun. Fluff is make it a party. It is the tailgate aspects of college football is a huge slice of Americana. But when you lean too much into that, you do start losing ground to your competitors.
I'm with Lucy, though. It's a 3-hour show. I think, you find the balance between, the smart and the funny. And Nick Saban is going to just make a lot of D's nuts jokes, and he'll provide the funny.
He's the rat poison now.
Yeah.
I can't believe that he's going to get this ending, that he's going to also be able to save College Game Day because Fox, they got Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer's the cheap and dirty Saban. There's a quality difference there in what you're talking about on exits and ego. One of the broadcasts is going to have the most credible guy in the world at the center of everything, teaching everybody. Enjoy. Maybe McAfee will bring something out of him.
And the other guy has a book about character.
Hey, Dan, you think Saban's going to make more money in his new career than he did in his old career?
You guys are underestimating.
He has it written in his deal that as an analyst, he gets $1 more, the richest coach.